And my brother said, Mr. Scarp has been coming around, and he's like, shh, let's go outside. Let's go outside. And I go outside, and my brother Dominic tells him what happens, and he goes, okay, I'll take care of it. And inevitably, that 40,000 of debt from Scarpa became Teddy Persico. And Teddy was a little bit more reasonable of a person. And my father was able to, to make a payment plan and pay it off. But he was my old man was that close. My godfather's son owed him money from gambling. He was a degenerate gambler, owed him money for gambling. They broke his leg. They gave him a beat and it broke his leg. So he was no joke, man. He would summon somebody that they knew he was going to kill. But the person that he would summon to come to the club didn't know. If you get called for, you have to go. Because if you don't go, then you look guilty. So you have to go. If a boss or somebody says, you got to meet me here, whatever, blah, blah, blah. That's just the way it goes. And what he would do is, I guess he learned from past times, what he would do is he would actually pretend like he was going for something. And the guy would jump and try to run. And I guess in the past, if he just grabbed the gun and started shooting, he would have to shoot wild and try to catch him, try to get him, because the guy would jump and run. But what he would do is he would lean over, the guy would like kind of flinch and look like he was going to run, and he would grab a tissue and he would blow his nose, and then the guy was kind of like relax. Oh, he's just blowing his nose. Then he would grab his gun and shoot him and kill him. And then they would roll him up in like a carpet or something like that and just throw him in the middle of the street and just leave him in the middle of the street. That was it. Yeah.
Crazy. Well, thank you, John, for giving us an insight to that crazy world, man.
Yeah, it's
That must
insane.
have been something growing up. I know you
Oh,
got a
yeah.
lot more stories to tell, but tell us. So you have the show that I've appeared on a few times now,
Yeah.
Serious and Silliness Outcasts. Why
Yeah.
did you start that?
I have two now. So it's Serious and Silliness Outcast. I knew I wanted to start it because I knew I obtained information well. And I knew that I don't like to say things that are not true. And if I do say something that's not true, I'll say, I'm not 100% sure. I'm not like full of shit. I don't like to say things like that. I know I'm accountable when I say something, I'll research it. Plus, I'm relatively well spoken from somebody from Brooklyn, right? And I like to talk. And I've always had pretty good ideas and thoughts about things and so on and so forth. So I'm like, I'm going to start a podcast. And of course, it was during COVID, right? But I didn't know what direction I was going in. I was kind of doing stuff for the Manosphere, and then I was kind of doing interview stuff, and I didn't know which direction I wanted to go in. It took some time before I realized it. And then finally, I was like, okay, I'm separating the channels. One's going to be Serious and Silliness Outcast. It's going to be an interview channel for people or people that know about social outcasts. So, like, come on my show, we talk about, for the most part, a prison gang. So we've talked about the Aryan Nation and the Mexican Mafia and so on and so forth. So I will do that. I'll do biker gangs like, the Mongols or the Hells Angels, which I've interviewed people from them. And of course, being from my background, getting people from the Italian Mafia was relatively easy because I just reached out to Larry Mazza and I said, I'm from the neighborhood. And as soon as I told him I was from the neighborhood, he said, yeah, no problem. I'll come on. And then that was able to open the doors because you would just say, do this guy like he spoke to Frankie Steele's Frank Pontillo, who's part of Scarpa's crew as well. Spoke to him. He said, go on this kid's podcast, and he's from the neighborhood, and blah, blah, blah. And he got other people to come on for me. So it was kind of relatively easy to break into that world because of my background. But then, it's become the Mafia genre is so old now on YouTube. It's kind of started with the Michael Frances and Sammy the Bull. And it's been going on for a few years now. So I'm like, okay, I don't want to just be that. So I just would like to do things that were just social misfits. So I have porn stars on. I have, bikers on. I had a former Klansman on. I've had people that were wrongfully accused of rape and murder on. I've had prostitutes on. And anything that's kind of just interesting, but social misfits that don't fit. And then I separated the other channel. The other channel is just my passion for bodybuilding. It's just all about bodybuilding, mostly the sport of bodybuilding, but some of it is also, weight training and the actual physical part. And I just love doing it. I love coming on here and talking to people like you and hearing different discussions and different times. And I tell you though, man, you don't realize sometimes when you open up Pandora's box and how certain people live, it's just unbelievable. You pull that lid open and you go, wow, people certainly live like
that. I'm sorry to interrupt again, John. How many people you have on the show do you think have experienced severe childhood trauma and personal
oh,
trauma growing up?
the majority of them, because you don't enter a crazy lifestyle if you're well grounded and your family's well grounded. If your family has good values and good traditions and morals, odds are you're not going to end up in this world. All the mob guys with the exception of like maybe Larry Mazza, who came from a stray family and just kind of fell into it because he was from the neighborhood. They all had terrible childhood. I don't know why. For the most part, like, Mooch from the Mongols, awful background, and became one of the national leaders of the Mongols, went to prison, hit rock bottom, came out, went to school. Now he's a social worker, left the club, and now he basically is interested in MMA, his wife, his family, his work, and he wants something to do with the club anymore. Same thing with Larry Mazza. Same thing with John Elite. Anthony Ruggiano was another guy who was bad with drugs. His father was Fat Andy, who was a capo in the Gambino crime family. Anthony Arleata. And it's always when these guys like reach rock bottom that they finally go, I can't live like this anymore. This doesn't work anymore. Whether if they would have come out of jail and went back into it if something was still left, because let's face it, the mafia is a shell of what it used to be. But the biker clubs are still very strong, as you know. And I've interviewed a lot of guys that are like, they just want nothing to do with it anymore. Danny D'Lo, I've had Pee Wee from the Hells Angels, I've had Mooch from the Mongols. And they're always terrible backstories, terrible, terrible backstories, And I consider myself lucky that even though my father was on the wild side and he was a little bit, of a street guy and did what he did to get ahead, I consider myself very lucky having my father in the house every day and having a male role model to look up to and lead, because even though he was in bed with these guys, he knew that this is not a life I want for my kids. And he basically led all three of us not to be involved with these people, you know? So yeah, I consider myself very lucky. You think back and, nothing's always hunky dory. There's always problems, but when you have a good family system, it helps a lot, a lot.
Well, that leads into my next question. I think you've answered part of it. What would you consider to be your greatest accomplishments in life?
I'll be honest with you, and it's funny that you asked. I have more regrets than I have great accomplishments. I truly do. I truly made what I consider bad decisions in early in my life because I followed like hedonistic, feelings instead of doing what's morally correct. And it's come back to kind of like getting kicked in the pants. Like I love my wife to death, but there were other girls before her that I just mentally destroyed because I just ran through women. And there were certain girls that I probably would have made great wives and great mothers. And now I don't have any children. And marrying my wife, which is a whole other story, we don't have kids. But it's not because it's not her fault. It's shit happens, right? But if I would have made the right decisions early on, my life would have been a little bit better off. My great accomplishments, I don't think I'm much accomplishments. What, I graduated from college? Big deal. Who doesn't? You know what I mean? Like, I, did I start a business and have it boom? No, I'm a sewer worker. I'm very proud of being a blue collar guy. I'm very proud of this channel. That much I could say. I'm extremely proud of the channel because I started it from nothing and now I'm on here talking to amazing people like yourself. But I have to be real with myself. I don't like to be the guy who pats himself on the back and says, I've accomplished this and I've accomplished that. I like to be real with myself. My accomplishments, I don't think, are anything that accepting responsibility as an adult, taking care of my mother because she has dementia. Those are things you're supposed to do. You're not supposed to get patted on the back for that. To me, that's not an accomplishment. To me, that's necessary. That's what you have to do. Taking care of my wife, making sure the bills are paid and there's a roof over her head and there's food on the table. That's what a man's supposed to do. I don't look at it as an accomplishment. I look at it as what I'm supposed to do. Now, if I had children, I would have probably told you my children, but I don't. So I have a plan to try and fulfill these accomplishments. And that would probably be the channel leading to helping youth and young kids and so on and so forth. But as far as me being completely fulfilled, that's yet to happen. It's definitely yet to happen.
Well, John, thank you for being honest with us
Yeah.
and sharing, a lot of interesting stories. And I consider you to be a success. Your channel has grown, and I see it only growing more. And, I think you have a lot to be proud of, man. You're here, you're not in prison, you're alive, you're healthy. Sometimes we take those little things, I think, sometimes for granted. And
Yeah.
I think you got a lot going for yourself. And I think a lot more good things are to come. So thank you for coming on our channel. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we go?
No, just that, your channel is fantastic. It's absolutely a tremendous channel. It's grown and it's an honor and a privilege coming on your channel and talking to you. I consider you a really good friend now. We'll definitely do it again because it doesn't go a couple of months before we come on each other's shows. And if anybody's interested, you go to Serious and Silliness Outcasts. And I've had a lot of interesting people. I've interviewed a lot of interesting people, to say the least. So that's
Yes,
about it,
you
man.
have.
Just God bless you and thank you so much, and always much respect to you.
All right. We're going to put John's shows, podcast links up at the end of the show. And just FYI, everybody, I was recently invited to the Mob Museum. John was one of the first people I let know, not to speak about La Cosa Nostra, but some other criminal groups. And so that sounds pretty interesting. That is slated for October. So stay tuned for more information on that. Thank you again, John, and be safe. We'll see you soon.
You got it, brother. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, aloha.